Good evening and welcome everyone. I'm Tom Saxton. I'm Plug-in America's program manager for National Drive Electric Week, and you're here for our first webinar of the 2015 season on engaging state and local government. So welcome everyone and thanks for joining us. Tonight we're going to talk about cool things that you can do to get support from your state and local government with the aim to increase awareness of your event, hopefully bring in some media attention and help increase your attendance. In past years, we've had a number of events that have had great success, bringing in mayors, state legislatures, congressmen, governors, all kinds of fun stuff. So we've got some past organizers with experience in engaging government successfully, so we're going to have them share some hints and tips with you to help you hopefully replicate their success. We'll give folks another minute or two to log in and join us, and while we're doing that, I'll just give you a preview of what's coming up later in the year. We'll have another webinar on event planning resources. We'll run that probably late June or early July. We haven't quite set the date yet. And then about a month out from the event, we'll have another webinar on working with the press and getting maximum benefit from social media. So if you'll hang on with, stay tuned, we'll get those dates so we get that all figured out. This evening we're going to have several speakers. Patrick Vanderheide from Plug-in America will talk to us about why and how you can engage local government. Phil Compton from Sierra Club will tell us about some of the experience he's had in Florida and some of the very ambitious plans that they've managed to pull off and hope other city captains can do. Zen Dubin Scott is our communications director for Plug-in America, and she'll help you out with some effective ways to work with the state government and orchestrating media around that. And then we'll finish up the evening with Gina Copeland Newfield, also from Sierra Club, and she'll help us out by managing a Q&A session at the end. So yeah, I think we've probably given folks enough time. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Patrick Vanderheide. He's the NDO social media manager for Plug-in America, and he'll share some of his insight and experience. Let me just swap over so that he can show you his slides.
There we go. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks
for that. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Does that show okay on screen now? I believe it should. So there we go. Agenda. So the topics I'm going to cover is why to engage with local government and our local politicians and local government agencies, how to engage, when to engage, provide a couple of examples, and then finally things to kind of think about for your National Drive Electric Week Day. As Tom mentioned, I'm also responsible for social media, and so as you do these things, thinking a bit about social media and generating interest that way is always present of mind for me as well. So let's continue on. So why engage with local government? Well, there are a number of agencies out there that want to that share accomplishments, things that they've done related to electric vehicles, and this is a good opportunity for them to get out there and kind of tell their tale, or maybe things that are kind of coming down the road. So engaging with those organizations is a great opportunity for them. It's also a great time to get some PR around those events and your event. Participation of elected officials. It is the same sort of thing. It's their opportunity to kind of have some success. notoriety, and to also talk about things coming down the pike that they may be involved with. So I guess one thing that's important also about this is as you engage with your local elected officials or you engage with local agencies, that relationship that gets created, it creates some opportunities for additional change and gives you a kind of a platform for an ongoing relationship. And Phil will kind of talk about some of his opportunities and things that they've accomplished that way in the next segment here. So how to engage. So this is if you haven't had a relationship before, and even ongoing, having these proclamations, having a proclamation that's related to National Drive Electric Week, gives something to write a story about. It's a focal point of interest, and so there's usually some sort of process for asking or requesting a proclamation from a local government elected official, especially in the executive branch. So mayors, governors, county executives, that sort of thing. Another thing is to request, like I said, the involvement of the local agencies, and then invite elected officials even if there is no proclamation, bringing out people who are running for office or people who are interested in office is a good thing, and it also brings more people to your event. We find that most every event has a few, at least local representatives, state representatives, or state senators at our events. So. Okay, when to engage? Well, the time is now, because these individuals that will attend these events are usually pretty busy, especially as the summer goes along. They tend to get very busy, and then government bodies usually have some sort of review cycle as it relates to the proclamations that they might be approving, or to bringing vehicles to an event. You want to kind of get out in front of that as soon as you can to make sure that they have it on their calendar and approve it, and can come out to your event. So I wanted to show an example of how to get a proclamation done, and here we go. There's on the Endu site, there's a resources link, and I show you kind of right where that's at on the page. And then down the page, there's a template for a local proclamation that appears. And if you go ahead and download that, it gives you a nice starting point for a document to submit. And I'll show you kind of how to do that. This is an example. This is from here in the state of Washington, from our governor's website. There's a request a proclamation section that you can go to on their website, and you can just go through the form, through their process, and submit a proclamation request. And then you'll want to follow that up. You want to make sure that it actually gets done. And here's an example. This is the one that we had last year that got sent to us and delivered by the governor. And here you see all the different information, or the proclamation with all the whereas clauses as we have in an example. And they customize it and make some fine tuning for it. And then you'll want to know, like, who's coming out, who's going to take part in delivering this proclamation, who's going to be at your event. And ideally, it's the person who signed the proclamation. So in this case, the governor, but mayors and like I said, county executives or presidents of councils. Those are all good folks. They draw attention, and they all have the ability to do this sort of thing. Another example I wanted to share was an agency. Here's an agency. The city of Seattle has City Light. It's an agency for our local utility, and they added 35 Nissan Leafs to their their fleet last year. And this too is one of these kinds of things where they can bring their Leafs out, talk about what they've done, and in this case, the mayor came and spoke about this event. This was not in conjunction with an Endu event, but it would have been a good opportunity for them to share that information. So as you get to the event day, and after you've organized someone to come out, some things to think about. Make sure that you know who's going to introduce these officials. Make sure you kind of are on the same page about what the presentation should be like. Zan will talk about that a little bit. Determine who on your organizing committee should be receiving the proclamation. Sometimes that'll be an Electric Auto Association member, maybe the president of the local chapter, or the organizer of the event. Make sure that you take pictures. Make sure to share those pictures on social media the day that you the day of the event. And again, Zan will talk about that in a little more detail. And then as you're leading up to this event, make sure that you're sharing the fact that this person and this event is going to occur with your social media in the lead up to that event. So that will help generate a lot of interest and bring more people out to the event as well. And that's it. That's all I have. So let me go ahead and introduce Phil Compton. He's a senior regional representative for Sierra Club in Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, Florida, and he has some great stories too about how to engage and kind of bringing it to the next level. So without further ado, Phil, I'll go ahead and switch to you. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking time to join us. Let me explain a little bit. I'm a Sierra Club staff organizer who focuses on green transportation, on education, on advocacy, for switching as rapidly as we all can, as many of us as are possible, to modes of transportation that use little or no oil. At Sierra Club, we organize efforts to achieve these changes, which of course require education, first and foremost, of the general public and of targeted community decision makers in particular. So we use the opportunity of the Drive Electric Day event excuse me, to not only educate the public on the availability and the features of these great vehicles, but also to achieve real changes in our community. We work with stakeholders, EV owners like you and wannabe owners, people you know, and local and state government officials to ID a factor that is slowing down the switch to EVs in your community. So I'd like to present you with a challenge and an opportunity. You're working with other EV enthusiasts. This could be more than just a one-time only public education event. It could be more than just an opportunity for the dealerships you bring in to offer ride and drives to develop fresh sales leads. That's all part of it, of course. And if that's all that happens, well, that's plenty. So don't get me wrong. But I just want to suggest that what you also have the opportunity to do in the course of planning this event and in the months afterwards is to develop a powerful relationship with your host city. You can use the event in the months leading up to it to organize a team of local advocates who work with local government staff and elected officials to identify the barriers that exist in your town, and you know they're there, to EV adoption, and to work not only towards organizing a great event in September, but also to make it the time when a significant breakthrough is announced. A breakthrough that you can ID now and work with the leaders of your community, with your stakeholders, to identify the solution and get a commitment from local government and possibly business leaders to overcome this barrier. So I want to suggest that you can't do more than just have a proclamation issued by City Council. You can have your mayor announce the breakthrough, the significant action at your event. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? This could really become the subhead for the news story about your event, and it's a very newsworthy event, and elevate it beyond the weekend fun level to one that is really remembered in your community as having a lasting impact, one that demonstrates your community's commitment to tackling a primary source of carbon, you know, our tailpipes. What's happened with us? How have we done this? In Sarasota County here in Florida 4 years ago, we were able to use our event, which was one of the first Drive Electric Day events, as the organizing tactic that resulted in that city adopting a new set of standards for placement of charging stations. We are now in discussion with the city of St. Petersburg here in Florida on how this city, which likes to call itself green, can make a new commitment to being as green as they claim they are. Our city, for instance, lacks any EVs in its fleet, and we're talking with city council members and the mayor about that. This morning, for instance, we also hosted an electric bus demonstration with the local transit agency and an electric bus company, and we'll be urging them, and a lot of the board members are members of this particular city council in St. Petersburg, urging them to include some of those electric buses in their fleet. You know, but your situation is probably different than ours. You probably have already identified such barriers. You may already have a group of advocates who are informed on what's possible and what needs to be done. So I suggest that you consider letting this event be the time and place this summer to create a focus on the infrastructure and the policies that you'd like to see in your town. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm going to be really busy the next few months to organize this event, and that's all I can get done. and that's probably true. How can I do this too? I suggest that in carrying on these conversations to promote and organize the event, that you use it as an opportunity to broaden the conversation to include the status of your community with relationship to EV adoption. If it isn't feasible to get a commitment to resolve the elimination of the barrier that's your ID, that's really okay, because these things, they really can take a lot of time. You can carry this on through the next year, and in doing so, build momentum and interest in your event for the next year, the year after that, the 2016 event. We find people, when they volunteer their time, they do it because they want to be some part of something big. They want to be part of something that's really meaningful, that has a lasting impact. Your event could become the catalyst for doing that. At Sierra Club, we really do know that what Margaret Mead said a long time is so very true. Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has. So good luck and have fun. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Zan Dubin-Scott, the Communications Director for Plug-in America. Zan?
Yes, thank you, Phil, and thank you, everyone, for listening this evening or this afternoon and for helping to make Drive Electric Week such a great success. I like to segue from what Phil has said to give an example from California. Our Governor Jerry Brown has picked Drive Electric Week a few years in a row now to sign and announce EV-friendly legislation. It's really kind of exciting, and I do have to do a hat tip to our legislative team. We also have the luxury of paying an aide outside of our group to help us in the state capitol. So it's not easy to do on a voluntary basis, but it certainly can be done. Sorry if you hear the barking. There's nothing I can do about that at the moment. Anyway, last year, for instance, Governor Brown signed 6 bills, including one that allowed renewed stickers for HOV lanes. Likewise, Brown, he had 1 million Twitter followers at the time, so he tweeted this out. Our ranking rocketed, and their office issued a press release as well. It was wonderful. So, having said that, I'd like to go over just a few general PR tips for Drive Electric Week. I won't go into detail, but we have a comprehensive resources page with all kinds of great suggestions and timing tips and a template for your media alert. And also, please feel free to ask questions at the end of this webinar about this or send us an email. And then, just so you know, your national organizers, many of us on this call, will reach out to the national media contacts that, including EV bloggers and newspapers and such who cover, coast to coast. We look to you to contact local reporters and editors. Finally, on this note, Sierra Club will generously be sharing and sending out local contacts for, I believe it's almost every participant, their city. And also don't forget that you can, on your own, find some really good local bloggers who can provide great coverage. I find them on Twitter, and I like to get folks who have large followings of, several thousand. So there you have it. On PR with policymakers, so as folks have mentioned, you will be communicating with your policymaker's office and early on. So do let them know that you'd love to have a quote from them minimally about Drive Electric Week to use in your media alert. You can offer to draft that quote for them and for their approval to save them time. Along the same lines, you might send them some EV language, pro-EV language for their proclamations, because they can be customized. And again, be sure you send anything that you draft to their office for approval prior to distribution. As for a press conference, if you're planning one, one thing to remember is you want to be fairly certain that if you have a fairly prominent figure there, you want to have a healthy audience. It doesn't necessarily have to be your top line media, but you want a crowd. So do invite your electeds to attend, and also share with them what you plan to do and ask about their needs and expectations. Typically, I like to schedule press conferences with no more than, say, 4 or 5 speakers, and I politely invite each one to speak no more than 3 minutes, usually 2, etc. So again, ask about their preferences, unless you've got, for instance, they may want to speak at the end of the program. And do remember that spelling counts, especially with elected officials. I would say go for the gold, ask for the mayor, governor, him or herself, and don't volunteer to accept a representative, although you may, in fact, end up getting just that. So remember, let's see, we're moving to social media, and we again remember to ask folks to tweet. And as I mentioned earlier, we picked up a lot of eyeballs when Jerry Brown did this for us, and also Facebook posting. And as Patrick said, I like to do this well in advance to try to boost attendance, and you can ask pretty much anyone who's participating in your event, from vendors to OEMs or car dealerships or nonprofits, also to help you get the message out. This is another advantage of a media alert, is you've got all the facts there in one easy place for folks to look, and to make sure that you're all on literally the same page. Remember too that photos and videos, particularly videos, are very big, and they can be made very simply these days just with an iPhone. That's kind of become quite acceptable, the homemade look. And one last note, please remember the hashtag NDEW2015 in all your social media communications. Okay, I think I'm going to pass it on now for a commercial from our trusted introducer, Tom Sexton.
Thank you, Zen, and I apologize for the typo there on that last slide. Should be, as Zen pointed out, NDU 2015, not 2014. That's my fault, not Zen, so I apologize. Let's see, now what we'd like to do is just take a little poll that helps us understand our audience, that is you. So we're curious to know what motivates you to become a city captain or a volunteer at a National Drive Electric Week event. So if you could, please, you should now have a poll up on your screen, and please check any and all of those items which match your motivation for being involved with National Drive Electric Week. And while you guys are doing that, I'd like to introduce Gina Copeland-Newfield. She's the director of the Electric Vehicles Initiative at Sierra Club, and she'll be handling the Q&A for us tonight.
Terrific. Thank you, Tom, and thank you to all the panelists and to all of you who've joined us tonight. It's really terrific that all of you are organizing these events. Last year we had events in 150 cities around the country, and we had upwards of 90,000 people participate and got more than 200 media hits, and really helped boost EV sales, and as some of the speakers said, also participated in getting our policy makers to get more excited about and more committed to electric vehicles and the programs that will further accelerate their adoption. So this is a really exciting topic. So without further ado, I wanted to turn it over to all of you to ask your questions and make your comments, but let's make sure that we keep the comments and questions somewhat brief. Erin, do we have a first question or comment?
We don't have any questions yet, so there's a questions box. You guys can type in your questions, or you could possibly raise your hand and speak your question if you'd like to do that. I will keep an eye on both of those things, so please feel free to put in your questions.
I'd love to bring up something, and so I get my terminology right. This time we had a webinar earlier this morning, and someone asked if, what are the kind of exciting or new vehicles on the road these days, and one of them, which is really pretty cutting edge, is the Tesla P85D, which is the dual wheel drive. And they're not that easy to come by, but if you know anyone who has one and you have a place to drive it fast, it's been a real draw. It goes from 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds.
And also this fall, hopefully the Tesla Model X will be out. Hopefully there'll be a few of those in customer hands by the time we get to September, so that'll be exciting. We'll also have GM coming out with a new version of the Volt. No doubt that will be pretty exciting. More range, lower sticker price. Should be pretty cool. And probably by August we'll know about any other vehicles that may be coming out that will be a big draw for electric vehicle events in September.
Okay, so one question was EV motorcycles question mark. I think that is a question if there are any new EV motorcycles coming out.
I don't know of anything new. Obviously, we had the Harley-Davidson tour with their concept motorcycle. Yeah, I'd say stay tuned and see what happens in August. But I don't think we have the inside track on any upcoming announcements.
And it's possible, though, that the person who asked the question meant whether it was acceptable to have electric motorcycles at these events. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. I think that would be a really interesting draw for people to be able to check out not only electric cars, but electric motorcycles and maybe even electric bikes or buses, too.
Yeah, our focus is highway-capable production plug-in electric vehicles. And that certainly includes a bunch of motorcycles. And we broaden that to anything that has a plug. So yeah, plug-in bicycles, buses, those are all great things to feature at National Drive Electric Week events.
Okay, great. We have Stephen Sondheim has his hand raised. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Stephen. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, good, good. Well, we've done this every year for 4 or 5 years in Memphis and also around Tennessee, and it is so much fun. I mean, we circle the cars, the different kinds. People really like. 100 people came out last year. We gave rides, and I want to mention some ideas I've got. It came up on the last call, but people would really come out to see the new cars. In other words, if anybody's coming out with a new car, to see if the dealers would probably like to have them at this event. And another idea is, and I don't know if it's okay by the Sierra Club, but what if dealers were to offer some kind of discount, probably pretty small, but for people, a coupon for people who came to the event? Now, I don't know. We have to check that. And the other thing I just found out today, and I emailed Gina, is that Tennessee, through TDEC, that's our Department of Environment and Conservation, and I don't know if this is a national thing or just a local thing, but they have $625,000 now to offer a rebate through the government of $2,500 on a electric and $1,500 on a hybrid. So maybe other states would do that too. Maybe that's a national program. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I wanted to share that. Yes.
Yeah, and thank you again for sending that to me. I really had no idea this was coming. The Connecticut announcement came today. The rebate program was announced in Connecticut yesterday, and I don't know if others on the call knew that the Tennessee announcement was going to be happening this week too, but it surprised me very pleasantly. And my initial read on that, Steve, was that it's a state program, just like the other state rebate programs like in Massachusetts or California or Pennsylvania. It's, I think you said it's $2,500 for a full battery electric, and then $1,500 for a plug-in hybrid. So it's great, and I think these kinds of events where you engage policymakers, who knows, maybe some of these policymakers or their staffers attended your previous events in Tennessee, Steve, or some of the other folks in Tennessee who've organized events, and they got inspired. So all the more reason to get these policymakers and their staffers engaged in these events.
Yeah, and one other thing, I think having information on the real costs, in other words, what kinds of rebates, national, state, dealership, are available, so that somebody can look at a date or something. Having that information there is really important.
Yep. And we have some good talking points on the Drive Electric Week website, but if folks have some ideas for how we can improve those talking points, we'd love to hear those too. All right, Aaron, do we have a next question?
Hey, I'll just jump in and do a last call. We've got nearly everyone's voted on the poll, but if anybody else wants to do it, that'd be great, and I'll take it down shortly.
Okay. Aaron, do we have any other questions?
Oh, I am so sorry. See what happens when I mute? So the Sierra Club rep mentioned a standard document on a city's installation for EV chargers, and they want to know if that's available.
I'm not sure if I understood the question, but did other panelists understand it to answer it?
I think it was from Phil's presentation.
Maybe can you repeat it slowly, Aaron?
Sure. The question is, the Sierra Club rep mentioned a standard document on a city's installation for EV chargers, and they want to know if that standard document is available.
It's not a standard document. It's a policy that was adopted by that particular city. And again, that was several years ago, and it has since guided their application of the policy to install charging stations in that city. So I'm sure there are other examples around the country, but I'd be happy to maybe put this up on the website so it can be shared. Again, it's not the freshest thing that's happened, but I'm sure other things like that have happened since then in other places.
Yeah, and Phil, maybe that's something we can send along on the listserv, the Drive Electric Week Google group as well, so people can see an example.
Right.
One thing along that line is the Puget Sound Regional Council. This was a few years ago. Hired some people to develop a model ordinance, and Plug-in America was involved in that. And if you just do a web search for EV model ordinance, you should find it from the Puget Sound Regional Council. And that has ordinances that a city can use to just, slap in to allow proper signage for EV stations and to set policy on, like handicap access to charging stations, just handle a bunch of those issues. And it was written for Washington State, but I think it applies pretty well to others. And there's also a document that we helped develop for the state of Hawaii, which again was for Hawaii, but it was intended to be fairly generic to help companies and municipalities get started with EV support and charging infrastructure.
I'll also share that I met this morning with a rep from another NGO, and I think this is under wraps at this point, so I won't share which NGO or too many details, but I'll say that this is a great NGO that's working on a report on some great things that cities around the country are doing to promote EV adoption and how cities could be doing better. So sort of like a scorecard, although not exactly a scorecard. And I think they're going to be coming out with that this summer. So that'll be a great tool that we'll make sure to send along to city captains so that you can check that out and maybe pass it along to your policymakers locally. Okay, Aaron, do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do. The next question is, in the past years, have cities, counties, states hosted NDO, or is it usually a nonprofit or community group? And do you have advice on how to incorporate cities, counties, states in the NDO planning process?
So this is Gina. I'll start with that one. I'm sure folks will have things to add to that. Yes, and I'll give, let's see, I have one example I can think of first, and I'm sure there are others. So last year, the state of Massachusetts, that's where I happen to be based, and Massachusetts had recently created a zero-emission vehicle commission. They decided to organize, in conjunction with National Drive Electric Week, a 3-city tour. And so basically, all in one day, they had 3 different events in 3 different cities. And in one place, they're highlighting incorporating EVs into a municipal fleet, thanks to a state grant program. In another location, they're highlighting workplace charging at a big office park where, again, the state had offered a grant to help them with EV charging installation. And then at a third city, at a dealership, they were offering an award to the dealership in the state of Massachusetts that had sold the most EVs in the past year. So, you know, it's definitely been done before where the state has gotten involved. As Zan mentioned, Governor Brown took the opportunity last year during Drive Electric Week to sign 6 EV-related bills into law, and that was due to a lot of outreach of folks to the governor's office. I'd say it's like anything else. It's all about relationships, right? So it's all about you picking up the phone and meeting folks and talking with them, and just if you haven't already developed relationships with these policymakers and perhaps more importantly, their staffers, you know, the behind-the-scenes people who really do the grunt work to make these things happen, that's what's going to make these sorts of things more likely. So if you can really start to have those conversations with policymakers and their staffers about how this could really be an opportunity for them. Like maybe they've been looking for a great hook to announce a new EV program. You can basically provide that to them. So I'll stop there and see what else others wanted to add on that.
Yeah, I know we've definitely had a number of events that have been hosted, like at City Hall or at the state capitol, and those have been organized typically by folks not necessarily, you know, from the mayor's office or whatever, but in cooperation with the office. But we definitely see in our roster of volunteers, we see people that are working for maybe the mayor's sustainability office or for the governor's office. So yeah, I think that happens in a variety of ways, and you know, whatever way you can get your local governments involved, whether they're hosting the site or coming to your site to speak, you know, all of those things are great.
And for anyone who has never done anything like that before, I would just say that, boy, I'm making all this noise today. You know, it can be, the initial outreach can be as simple as a phone call to the mayor's office. Just tell them what you're doing, ask for the appropriate person to talk to. And secondly, I would say we're trying to do something just like this in Los Angeles this year. Last year, we had a representative give us a nice proclamation, and we are trying to get the mayor out this year, and they have taken over. I wouldn't say taken over. They're sharing the organization with us this year. It usually does take kind of a partnership with EV volunteers and the office. But boy, that's going to be very helpful, because then we have all of their outreach muscle and et cetera, all their relationships coming to the party too.
Great. Erin, do we have other questions?
Yes. So the next question is, we have had a lot of people trying to suggest places to have this year's Melbourne, Florida event. What are the best places you think they should be held? Ideally, we want City Hall with their one charger, because city equals publicity the papers will actually pick up.
Maybe Phil should start with that one because he's Florida-based.
Okay, well, that could be a good place. I would consider, you know, when you're going to do the event. Is it going to be during the week? Is it going to be for the press and people who are on their lunch hour, perhaps? Or is it going to be a weekend event that is more of a festival type of atmosphere? So, you know, decide those sorts of things, because your idea could work probably during the week just as well as, maybe better than a weekend. But if you're going to do more of the latter approach, so more of the festival, then look for a place, and you know them in Melbourne, where people go, okay? and where you can get perhaps a permit for a park. In our case, over on the other side of the state in St. Petersburg, we have the co-sponsorship of the city of St. Petersburg, which means that we will have, among other things, media done by the city with us because we have a park permit to do the event at a popular park where a lot of people come, or close to where a lot of people come. So it's a natural draw. It's the kind of place where people go anyway on the weekends. So just think about that. In other words, don't expect people to go someplace where they never go. I wouldn't hold it at City Hall on a Saturday, for instance, because that's kind of might be an odd thing for people to do on a Saturday. But Wednesday lunchtime thing, that could work really well.
Yeah, so this is Tom. I agree with what Phil's saying. One of our highest priorities is to get a site where there's going to be a lot of members of the public that are just wandering by, that they aren't there to come to your event. They maybe don't even know anything at all about electric vehicles, and those are the people we want to talk to. So in the Seattle area, there's a sort of a 50s style hamburger place that hosts a car show every weekend all summer long. And everybody in town knows, go down to the root beer place and it'll be a car show. So we get a lot of people who just don't necessarily aren't seeking out electric vehicles, and they just come to see what the cars are this week. We've also had very good success, in other locations where people have located, in a mall. There's always a lot of foot traffic there. In a park, like Phil suggested. Another popular place is if you can get involved with a larger event. So there's a big car show. You might be able to carve out a spot there, or some other sort of unrelated fair. We've got an event this year that's going on at the Mushroom Festival. And so, anywhere you've got a lot of people that'll be wandering by, and you can spark their interest in electric vehicles.
The challenge, of course, is finding one of these great places that's also optimum for test drives, right? Which, of course, test drives and rides is a primary purpose of what we do on the day. But it can be done.
Yep. And certainly some events don't have test drives, but as Ann said, it's definitely ideal if test drives are available. And just on the subject of picking a date, I think we've probably already mentioned this to some city captains on the listserv, but it's worth mentioning that Rosh Hashanah is the evening of September 14th through the evening of the 15th. So, if you were thinking of having the event on a weekday, it may be worth avoiding the day of September 14th and the evening of the day of the 15th and the evening of the 14th, and also Yom Kippur, another very important Jewish holiday, is the evening of the 22nd through the evening of the 23rd. So I think most events will be done by then, but just a heads up for folks that those are dates we're trying to avoid if possible. Erin, do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do. The next question is, what is the best way to motivate our volunteers, especially since it's our first year and we're a new chapter in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. So, welcome, Kentucky.
Yeah, welcome. Who wants to take a first stab at that one?
One thing I would say is send them to our website, because it is just resplendent with past events. You can click on all of last year's events, see great photographs, cool things that happen. It's real hard evidence of what's gone on. So that's what I would suggest to start with.
And of course, there's always T-shirts. Everybody digs T-shirts at events. Very soon, we should have artwork ready that you can slap onto a T-shirt to get that rolling quickly. Last year, the Electric Auto Association offered T-shirts for sale that were pretty cool, and we may have other offers happening this year. So I would say stay tuned for those sorts of city captain resources.
You can always browbeat people about the environment or national security or just kidding there. But, you know, those we have a range of goals as laid out in our poll to get people interested. We come to this from many different angles. So, you know, maybe figure out a way, figure out what inspires particular individuals and talk about that.
This is Patrick. I was going to say that one of the successful events I've seen from a social media standpoint has been an event in, I believe it's in Maine, that's at a health food or a healthy food store, and they fill up their parking lot with EVs, and the owners of the store are big supporters and put out banners, and I think it generates a lot of traffic for people who are come and go to the store anyways, in addition to it just being a high visibility location that people see some excitement around as they're going.
Yeah, this is Gina. As we were talking about earlier, so much of this is about relationships. And so, you know, as Zan was saying, people are inspired and motivated to care about a switch to electric vehicles for a whole range of reasons, but people are also human and want to have meaningful, fun relationships with other humans. And so, you know, the more we can connect with people socially, you know, whether it's on the phone or in person or over email, and start to build those relationships, you know, maybe having a small social event among some of the folks in Kentucky who are, you know, in your area. Maybe you can all go to a film together, or, you know, catch a beer together and chat about electric cars. That could be the start of the conversations about, okay, you know, here's this event we want to organize. Are you interested or willing to be part of a committee to help put it together? Because we definitely need some help. I think if you just start to build those relationships, people will be excited to be part of a group of like-minded people, you know, doing something tangible and exciting.
Along the same lines, one of the big draws for participants, volunteers, is that it's like a car club. The day of the event, people just love to hang out and talk about their cars. You know, every single detail, share experiences. So you might want to make that very clear to them too. That's a great way to socialize with fellow EV drivers, or of course a great way to learn about it.
Okay, Arian, what's our next question?
Tom was going to jump in with the results of the survey.
Super.
Yeah, so here we go. It should be visible. As you can see, at least among this group, the environment was the big winner. Not a huge surprise, I suppose, but it's always good to see if our you know, assumptions are correct. So thanks to everybody who participated in the poll. Back to you, Erin.
Okay, great. So from the question about location earlier, we did get a recommendation that came in through the questions window. One of the city captains says they use a farmer's market with a drive-through coffee window with parking, and they said it worked great. So there's that suggestion. We also have had 2 people ask for information about how you get dealers or other businesses to come to your event to exhibit or offer test drives.
Yeah, that's a great question. This is Gina. I'll start, and I'm sure others will jump in. So one thing to keep in mind is that dealers may initially be reluctant, especially if your event is on a weekend. That tends to be the days when they sell the most cars, understandably. So I think part of our job is to convince the dealerships that this is actually like shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, this is people who are excited about cars, they're excited about electric cars, and if they can show off their electric cars at these events, it could turn into some real sales. And it's also an opportunity to meet people in a non-dealership, and I think even most car dealers appreciate the fact that people often dread going to a car dealership as opposed to a farmer's market or, you know, some other community space that tends to be a more friendly environment. And then, you know, just sharing with them some stories. You know, in past years, we've definitely seen a spike in sales of plug-in vehicles in the month after Drive Electric Week. So I think we can share with dealers that this is really a great opportunity for them, you know, to potentially make some good sales. Others on that one?
Yeah, in the Seattle area in 2012, we had a local Nissan dealer that sent a salesman to an event, and he spent all afternoon giving test drives to people, and that went over apparently so well that the next year that dealer practically begged us to host the event at their dealership. And normally we don't like making hosting a National Drive Electric Week at a dealership because we want to make sure everybody knows that all vehicles from all automakers are welcome. But as it turned out, we had our site that we were planning to use fall through at the last minute. We ended up hosting it at that Nissan dealer that year, and they were very gracious about letting other people get involved. And they love the exposure. And again, they've every year they make very tempting offers to host the event for us, and they've been extremely supportive. So if you can get one dealer there to just send a salesperson and see what it's like to have a captive audience of people that are predisposed to look at electric vehicles and have already heard a lot from a bunch of enthusiastic owners and just need a test drive to finish the deal, then you will not have any trouble getting those dealers back.
I was going to say, this is Patrick, that dealer, if I remember correctly, sold 16 vehicles that day. So they're very enthused, and they've been a very, very active member of our Facebook Nissan Leaf Facebook community ever since as well. So it was a pretty powerful event for them.
I think also directing, this is Gina, directing the dealers to the National Drive Electric Week website. I mean, I think there's a lot of impressive stuff up on the website, and it could allow them to understand that this is part of a larger effort, and it's very well organized, and there's great information on the website that's credible. So I think you shouldn't have to feel like you need to create all of your own materials from scratch or recreate the wheel. That's part of what we have done at Plug in America, Electric Auto Association, and Sierra Club the last few years is put together all these resources so that you can then take them and run with them. So I think showing the dealerships that map of all the events happening around the country and some of the other pages on the site will impress them. But again, about relationships, it's probably about going into the dealerships in person and meeting with people face to face. That's probably going to be more fruitful. Okay, Erin, what's our next question?
So we have a hand raised from Joe Ozegovich. Oh, I just unmuted you, Joe, so sorry about that without warning you. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I noticed there's a call from Steve in Memphis, and I'm not familiar. I'm from Memphis as well, so I was trying to coordinate with him. So I just need contact information for him, and we can get the ball rolling.
Okay, but the other person that was on from Memphis?
Yeah, that was Steve Sondheim, so we can make sure. What was the person speaking now? What's your name?
This is Joe Ozegovich.
I'm Joe.
Okay, and Erin, we have both their emails, right, from the registrations?
Yeah, we'll make sure they get connected.
Good, okay.
Thank you, Joe. The next question is, do we have any advice on ways to fundraise to purchase T-shirts and giveaways, etc.?
Does anyone want to take a first stab at that one?
I suppose you could do an online contest like Indiegogo, or what's the other one that's so popular? Anyway, I'm sorry, they're not online contests, but they are easy ways to raise money for any kind of issue or you might have.
Yeah, and then there are, the old-fashioned ways of raising money, like through bake sales and yard sales and that sort of thing. You also may want to ask some local foundations, charitable foundations, if they have, even just a few $100s to help sponsor or support this kind of event. Also, you know, at the national level, we're looking for corporate sponsors, but of course, you're very welcome and encouraged to find corporate sponsors for local events too. And I think, Tom, have we already shared with folks the document that we were working on regarding corporate sponsorship and engagement?
That's not posted on the website, but if anybody's interested, there's a contact link on the home page that'll send you a sponsorship email address, and I'd be happy to send it out.
No, I meant more, not the sponsorship one or two pager. I meant the sponsorship guidelines document and engagement document.
Yeah, I don't think we've shared that.
Okay, well let's check in about that and see if we can get that information out to people soon.
Okay.
One of our attendees also wants to share an answer to that question as well. So Joshua, I'm going to unmute you now.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Brenna Kaminsky from Space Coast EV Drivers in Melbourne, Florida. And last year was our first event in Melbourne. I had helped do a Huntsville, Alabama event the years before that. But we asked people who were going to be having booths at our event just to do a donation or like a $25 charge, and we didn't ask nonprofit organizations that we invited for any donations, but we did ask car dealerships, Florida Power and Light, all those kind of people, just a minimum of like $25. And from there, we used about $200 to print a couple t-shirts, and we kind of made them like limited edition. So you couldn't have, you know, everyone didn't get one for free, but we just drew up a little t-shirt, got it printed at a local place, and we used money from people that were going to be exhibiting at our event to get those shirts, and that ended up working out pretty well for us. I think the most money we got from any one donor was BMW, and they gave us $500.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I was actually thinking, you know, $25 for some of these big companies sounds pretty tiny, so I bet you could get more from a lot of these companies.
Yeah, we did the $25 amount for really kind of local companies, just because we'd never done the event in Melbourne before. They didn't really know how it was going to be. We couldn't really share like attendance records. But this year going forward, we've kind of made it like sponsorship levels, and last year we had over 500 people attend. BMW got a colored front page of the local news with their i3s on it, so I think this next year we'll have some numbers and some ideas to kind of share with them to maybe up that ask a little bit.
Nice job. Great example. Okay, so we probably have time for one more question if we have one, Erin.
Okay, good. Yes, I have one last question here. The question is, has anyone ever planned a road rally for electric vehicles during ENDU? If so, any advice?
Well, Phil, maybe you can give your example of the parade that you're working to organize, and I know in LA, Zan has helped organize a parade, which I know is a little different from a road rally, but similar.
Yeah, we're planning to kick off our event in St. Petersburg with a EV parade where all the cars, and this would be primarily owners of cars, you know, and from the various government agencies that participate as well, but having a car flag to identify it in case you couldn't tell as an EV, and to go down a street, and again, an area where there will be public attention, and it'll draw people to the event and alert them that this event is happening. I would advise there is could be a considerable amount of cost for street closures involved in that, so check with your local city about how that works, because that, you know, it's certainly an optional thing, and it probably wouldn't be free to do that, but think about that. It could be fun.
That was my experience too. It was super fun, but we had to pay a lot to the police department and an agency that reserved, closed off parking along city streets, so it wasn't cheap.
And it also could take a lot of time to get that permit. So if you haven't already reached out, it may be too late, but it may not. So it's worth checking.
This is Patrick. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that both Tom and I have taken part in parades outside of the Indu event, but that generate outreach and create relationships, as you were talking about, Gina. We've taken part in parades during the 4th of July and at other opportunistic events where we can bring EVs out and be a part of those events, and they've been very successful for us here in the Northwest. And again, it's just other events throughout the year. This isn't just an Indu is a national kind of coordination of a week that we're doing, but it's a year-round effort to spread the word and share our story, and so the 4th of July for us has been another one of those, as well as we have taken part in some rallies here having to do with a 3-state project called the West Coast Electric Highway. And so we've been involved in rallies, I guess would be the word for that, of going from charge station to charge station along the public highways that have been put in by the state. So those are other good events, and they help to create some of the relationships that we have here as well.
Wonderful. Okay, so I would say if there are other questions or comments we didn't get to, feel free to email us at this email here, events-2015@driveelectricweek.org. As Tom mentioned, we're going to be back in touch with folks about future webinars to help folks out, and we'll be continuing to stay in touch through the Google email listserv, the Google group. And we'll continue to put information up on the website. So thank you so much to all the participants. We're so excited. We know that it's early, but clearly all of you have really committed to making your events exciting and impactful in your community. And we know that this will continue to grow, and we think it'll be even bigger and better than last year. So anything any of the other panelists wanted to add?
I'll just say thank you to all the panelists and to all the attendees who took a chunk out of their evening to support this webinar and help the community share what we've all learned. And good luck with your events this year.